everyone, and welcome to my dream world. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience revisiting one of my favorite TV shows from my youth.
My little pony, my little pony.
Yeah, you probably get the gist at this point, so I'm going to move on. I'm all about exploring the psychology behind why certain shows or video games stick to people so much and what you can take away from them. This will be a part of my series of what I refer to as nostalgia trip, which also can be like revisiting something from my past that I still cherish today, like a video game or a movie, and I'm moving on to TV shows now, so let me know what you'd like to see next. Now, onto the review of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, Season 1. Now, if you haven't seen My Little Pony, this video probably isn't for you because I'm doing a deep dive in what this rewatch caused me to remember and stuff. So if you haven't seen it, probably don't want to watch this video. But now, onto the video. My Little Pony was definitely a show that stuck with me for a lot of my childhood. In fact, my younger cousin was actually the one that introduced it to me one summer, and I was hooked ever since. But while I enjoyed it in my childhood, I feel like there's a lot that went over my head, and I actually have a much deeper appreciation for it now. So here's my overall thoughts of each episode and what I took away from them. I'll make sure to divide this entire video up into sections by episode-ish, because this is going to be a long video. So if you only want to hear about a few episodes, I'll be leaving timestamps below. The season premiere of MLP is where everything begins, and it's definitely an episode that sticks in my mind, even after all these years. What's funny is the first episode I actually saw was the second episode, so you can imagine that I was a little bit confused. But despite that, I think it did a great job of solidifying the premise of this series, even without seeing the first half of the entire premiere. And that's why I think these two episodes are the perfect start to the show. We get a great idea of who these characters are and what we're going to be seeing from them in future episodes. Part of me almost wishes that Nightmare Moon was a more recurring villain and wasn't immediately reformed at the end of the premiere, but you know, everything was overall executed quite well, so I digress. But I also really like how they didn't just automatically make Twilight overpowered, because even though she's confirmed almost immediately, I think, to be like a naturally gifted unicorn, this is who we're supposed to see her as, she struggled to conjure magic, so it doesn't show her being immediately like superior to everybody else, which I think is great because it immediately kind of ties the main message of the show of she needs all 5 of her friends to complete her mission. So I really like how they did that, and I really loved the beginning of this season. I feel like the next part of the season was continuing to get to know these characters. The episodes have plots, they're upbeat, they're cutesy, but I don't feel like this is a problem. I enjoyed most of them, but I can see like some people thinking that it's a little more tedious at the beginning because we start off with a bang and then it kind of slows down a little bit to focus on individual characters, especially compared to future seasons, which makes sense. But despite that, I do enjoy that it tackles problems that likely we all go through at some point in our real lives. So in the Ticketmaster, Twilight has to choose between her friends, but she doesn't want to because she cares about them all. But she knows that she only has one ticket to give, and she's gonna end up disappointing the others. I don't blame her for being frustrated, and personally, I would hate to be in this position. Though, if I'm gonna be honest, Applejack had by far the most admirable reason to get the ticket. So, sorry, not sorry, but I would have picked Applejack. I get the idea of wanting to prove a point and to show that you can handle yourself, because often I feel the same way, but it's also not worth your physical and mental health, as well as the well-being of others. I'm gonna be honest, Twilight kind of annoys me sometimes, don't worry, I still love her, but she was absolutely right in this episode. You never want to push your limits overboard. Pushing yourself a little bit is okay because then you're going to get stronger and you're going to push your limits to the point where you can increase them and be more well-rounded, but you never want to go overboard. It's important to know yourself and to take care of yourself, which Applejack learns in the end. At this point, we know that Rainbow Dash is the cool one. She can be a little overconfident and showy, but overall is an admirable pony with a good heart. This is why I love the end of this episode. Rainbow Dash knows where to draw the line, and she stands up against Gilda to defend her friends when things go too far. Now, personally, I'm not one for pranks, which is why I related to Fluttershy a lot in this episode, and it's important to know this with your friends. We all have different senses of humors, we all have different limits, and if you're a true friend, you'll know this and you'll respect that. I'm also glad Twilight admits to being wrong. Pinkie was right to trust her inkling about Gilda, and it's always okay to acknowledge how someone or something is making you feel, because emotions and feelings are innate and individual. Even if Gilda ended up being cool, some people just don't click, and not everyone has to be friends with everyone else's friends. So I'm glad Pinkie follows through with her inkling in the end. This was a fun one. So at the beginning of this episode, Trixie reveals herself to be quite talented, but her boastfulness makes her talents less appealing to many ponies, especially the main six, at least the ones that are in the episode. Twilight eventually also shows that she's an even more talented unicorn, but she never boasts, at least on this episode, and uses her magic to help the town when they're attacked by an Ursa Minor. Understandably, Twilight was hesitant to do this because she didn't want her friends to see her as a show-off. However, using your talent to help people, ponies in this case, in need, is exactly when you should use them. And thankfully, her friends commend her for it and affirm that it's boasting that they don't like, not her magic. Also, can we take a moment to be horrified by how big the Ursa Major is? I mean, the ponies were tiny compared to the Ursa Minor's foot. And comparing that to the Ursa Major, I don't see how the Everfree Forest can even hold more than one. Okay, back to the review. Everyone can be brave. However, some ponies find it harder than others, and that's okay. Because when it really comes down to it, Fluttershy faces her fear, stands up against the dragon, and proves that even she can be brave in moments of need. Also, I appreciate that Fluttershy doesn't just tell him off. She reassures the dragon that he just needs to move along, fix his mistake, and no harm done. I'm not going to decide on anything firmly because I still have to rewatch the rest of the series and I tend to flip-flop a lot before deciding officially. But I'm really standing Fluttershy right now and I think she might be my favorite of the main six. Just saying. In these next few episodes, I feel like we get a good grasp about the ponies' relationship with each other. And in one of my favorite episodes of the series, at least in this season, this is very apparent. As a kid, I was almost 100% on Applejack's side. Probably because I related to her, I was a huge tomboy, and I really judged Rarity way too harshly at the beginning.
No shade, by the way, especially to Queen Tabitha St. Germain, who made my childhood.
Now that I'm older, I see both sides. Sometimes Rarity was too over the top and needed to think realistically, like when she was beautifying the trees instead of breaking them down like they were supposed to. However, sometimes Applejack took things too far too and could have reeled in a little bit more. This is especially apparent during the Truth or Dare scene when they are definitely just trying to spite each other and make each other do stuff they really didn't want to do. Also, it's very apparent that going by the book is not something you should do. I'm looking at you, Twilight, because certain activities, especially for something as personal as sleepovers, are not going to apply to everyone. Personally, I hate makeovers. I'm not saying that as a dig to anybody who likes makeup. You do you. If you enjoy it, great. But I just don't have the patience for that kind of stuff, and honestly would be really ticked if somebody forced me into it just because it was a suggested activity. I also think that being considerate, however, is important. Rarity was right to tell Applejack not to track mud all over Twilight's house and to be more careful rather than jumping into things impulsively. However, I'm really glad that they make up in the end, and they end up working together and using their respective skills to fix the problem, like the tree falling into Twilight's tree. Yes, Twilight lives in a tree. I'm gonna call it a tree, not a house. It is her house, though. You can have friends that are different from you and still get along, even if you don't always agree on certain activities that you enjoy. I feel like the message of this episode is really important, and it's grown on me a lot. There are going to be people who are different from you. Very different at that. And that's okay. More than okay, it's great. Sakura ends up being a huge help in later episodes and seasons. And if they never got to know her, they would never have known that. So jumping to conclusions about how somebody is not only harmful to them, but it can end up being harmful for you too. It's especially great to see Twilight, and especially Applebloom, standing up for Sakura, even though they don't know her, and pointing out hypocrisy.
Well, I heard that Sakura eats hay.
Pinkie, I eat hay. You eat hay.
It's also very nice to see the youngest one of the bunch being the most open-minded and accepting, very reflective on our world today. And this is why, even if this show isn't geared towards you, you can still learn from it and have takeaways. Okay. I didn't like this episode much when I was younger, and I honestly still don't, because I hate bugs, I'm very squeamish, and I hate it when people don't hear me out when I'm trying to help. So some of this episode was a bit triggering for me. And this, I'm not gonna lie, is the one episode where I facepalmed at Fluttershy multiple times.
Quick interruption here because my audio cut out in the original recording, but I want to reaffirm that Pinkie Pie was seriously the MVP of this episode, and that's who I'm referring to in the next part of this video. Sorry about that.
And I commend her for not telling off her friends when she was revealed to be helping all along, despite them ignoring her, because I certainly would have. But I think it's a lesson that you should be hearing people out before jumping into something without much thought. And I think that's something I personally do need to work on, and I'm sure many other people feel the same way. This episode really highlights wanting to be helpful, but not being quite sure how. Twilight doesn't have the particular skills that are needed to clean up winter and make room for spring. In fact, she almost makes it worse. However, when it's revealed that they need organization to get spring there on time for once, she's able to take what she has and be a huge help. So while she wasn't able to help so much in the traditional ways, she made use of her skills and contributed very largely. So this is something that most people should know. Like, there's always something you can do. And working with the team with a wide set of skills make things go even more efficiently. Okay. I might get some flack for this. So if you love the Cutie Mark Crusaders, don't hate me. It's always hard when you feel like you're behind. Applebloom struggles with being one of the only ponies in her class without a cutie mark. I mean, who wouldn't? She seems to feel like she's doing something wrong, which is really upsetting. However, this also causes her to do some pretty crazy things out of desperation to get her cutie mark, which causes more harm than good. Understandable, frankly. Everyone wants to fit in, but it's not worth trying to be someone that you're not. In the end, she learns it's okay to have a blank blank, and that she has all the more room to explore who she is alongside some of her new friends. At least until the next time we see them. This episode really sticks to me more now than it did before. Certain levels of competition are good. You can push yourself to try new things, have fun, and gain some more skills along with having friendly rivalries. However, if you take it too far, it eventually becomes toxic. This really hits close to home for me. Story time. Skip to the time I'm going to insert if you don't want to hear this and just want to hear the review. I used to be a competitive softball player. I played for about 5 years in a recreational league just for fun, and then eventually joined a more competitive team. Admittedly, I was the worst player on the team. by far. However, I learned so much and I improved time after time again, and I kept gaining confidence as well. But once I made it to the top, things got hard. Too much pressure was put on me by my coaches and especially by myself. And I eventually could not physically enjoy the game that I used to love so much. I tried to rejoin the recreational team after taking a break, but unfortunately it didn't work out and I was more burnt out than ever. My coach thought that it was a confidence issue, but it wasn't. It was my passion. And without passion, I cannot put the energy I need into an activity. Because of this, I hate competitive stuff, and I try to avoid it at all costs. I'm working on this because, again, learning new skills and gaining more confidence is a great thing, but it shouldn't come at the cost of your mental and physical health. Storytime regardless, Applejack and Rainbow Dash take things too far, and they start an unhealthy feud, which Twilight points out when they blame each other during slip-ups. Eventually, however, they see their mistakes and they come together to fix it, which I think is great for them. It's understandable that when you're going to a certain event, you want to feel comfortable and be wearing something that you like. I'm the same way. I'm only gonna wear certain things to a party, even if it's a little different than everybody else, because that's the only way I'm gonna enjoy myself. But if somebody does a favor for you and offers you a gift that they worked very hard on, you should appreciate it. Rarity makes these absolutely gorgeous outfits for all of her friends, and yet they don't really seem to appreciate it. And it turns out Rarity was right. They look absolutely stunning in those outfits, and admittedly absolutely ridiculous during the first fashion show. And this isn't me bashing eccentricity, because in fact, I encourage it. I'm a huge theater kid and we wear some crazy stuff with no shame. But they just looked horrible. So I'm really glad they came around in the end and gave back to Rarity in the end with her own dress. And she gets her fashion show. However, it seems that poor Rarity will continue to be overworked.
Now, I'll need you to make a dozen of each dress for me by next Tuesday.
I've never considered myself to be the most superstitious person, but as I've grown, there are going to be some things that I'm just not going to understand, and that's okay. Frankly, if you don't understand something, you're probably not the only one. However, getting overly worked up about that is not worth your time, and it's going to end up biting you in the butt, because you can't always be right, even when you're a genius. I'm not saying you should just go along with things, but I feel like it's just important for people to understand that you're not gonna get everything. You're not gonna have the same opinions about everything as everyone else does. And that's okay. So just live with it. That's all I'm saying. We continue to learn about these characters through the next chunk of the series, and we also get to see more sides of them and how their personalities come to be. With Rainbow Dash feeling the pressure of competition, all of her friends jump to be there for her. Except for Rarity, who is enamored with her admittedly gorgeous wings. However, similarly to Twilight and Boast Busters, Rainbow Dash is able to use her talents in a time of need, which saves not only Rarity's life, but her heroes as well. And this is when her true talent came out, to help a friend. And Rarity takes note of this and apologizes for being boisterous. Also, the Sonic Rainboom scene is one of my favorites, and I rewatch it all the time, so we love that too. Okay, I'm ready for the possible hate again. In this episode, the Cutie Mark Crusaders proceed to be annoying as All personal opinions aside, it can be quite hard to work with a group of energetic kids. And I can admit that because I bet I was quite a lot to deal with when I was that age too. But while Fluttershy is quite a bit of a pushover at first, she ends up being able to take control of the situation and earns the respect of the Cutie Mark Crusaders when she stands up to the cockatrice and gets it to go away and free Twilight. So again, I stand Fluttershy and the stare. I'm sorry, but this was just once again the Cutie Mark Crusaders being annoying. And now I remember why I almost always skipped this episode when I was younger. I do think it's admirable that each pony wants to try something new and do something they're not as comfortable with, but this proves that you may be talented in things that you're unaware of and have room for improvement in other skill areas. However, this might, honestly, this might have been one of my least favorite episodes of the season, but I still think it's important to note that putting yourself out there is never something to be ashamed of no matter what, because life is too short to just sit back and be overly cautious. I enjoy this episode very much because we get to see a more fleshed out part of Rarity's character. Yes, she is ladylike and can be prissy at times, but she can absolutely handle herself. She uses her wittiness and emotion to outsmart the Diamond Dogs, and eventually no fight needs to happen for them to let her go. She ended up not even really needing her friends. This is when I really begin to enjoy Rarity's character more and more, because as someone who formerly identified as a tomboy and wanted to put on a tough facade, portrayals like this allowed me to feel more comfortable embracing a more feminine side of myself, which I'm doing to this day. I don't need to dress a certain way to show that I can handle myself, and Rarity didn't either. The loyalty shown from all the rest of the ponies as well is also admirable, and especially Spike. And they use their skills rather than brute strength to find Rarity in the end. Look, I love the color green, especially this bright emerald green and forest green, but jealousy is not a good look on anyone. I absolutely understand how Rarity feels in this episode. I'm not judging her at all because she put a lot of work into impressing photo finish, but Fluttershy ends up unintentionally gaining all of the attention. Of course, this is disappointing, but it causes Rarity to lash out. However, Fluttershy doesn't even enjoy being a model, but doesn't say anything because she doesn't want to disappoint Rarity. In the end, they realize being honest with each other would have avoided so much trouble. So the lesson to take from this is to acknowledge how you're feeling, because lying about it isn't going to help anyone, especially not yourself. I feel like this last chunk of the season is where we start to see a little bit more of an expansion of the rest of Equestria and what other characters people are going to be involved with. Here's another episode where the importance of taking in both sides of an argument is really highlighted, because both the Buffalo and the Settler ponies have good reasons for feeling the way they do about the land that they're on, and eventually they're able to come to a compromise, which works out perfectly. But unfortunately, they had to resort to violence to get there, which is a lesson that everyone should take notice of, because you can resolve things without resorting to violence. But of course, it's not that easy. Which is why I think this message should absolutely be promoted more, because we're in times of turmoil right now. Fluttershy was rightly concerned about Philomena at first sight. However, as Celestia states, she could have just asked and it would have saved her so much trouble. So here's my thing. You should never be afraid to ask questions. Just make sure to be respectful about it. It's always a good idea to educate yourself and to broaden your mindset, but nobody expects you to know everything, so don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Also, we love Trollestia.
Gotcha.
This is one episode that brings a lot together. All of the main six had events that defined who they were, and eventually they ended up getting together. And this is all revealed to be connected even more closely than expected, because when they realized it was Rainbow Dash's sonic Rainboom that triggered the discovery of their special talents, they're overjoyed. And I also enjoyed that all of them exemplify the idea that discovering yourself is a journey that's not going to happen overnight. And while you can take steps to learn more about yourself, your journey cannot be forced. And I do feel like that's something a lot of people can learn from, myself included, because people think if I do this, it's gonna happen. It might not. And that's okay, because you still have your entire life to keep exploring. Nobody can ever replace you, because nobody can ever be quite like you. Again, the way Spike feels throughout this entire episode is understandable. Owlicious, the owl that helps Twilight throughout the night, ends up helping out when Spike cannot, which is something he's not used to. But eventually Spike learns that he's not being replaced, but that Owlicious can be there for Twilight when he cannot and save him some trouble. As noted, Spike is a baby dragon and needs his sleep, while Owlicious is nocturnal and can help out at night. And while Owlicious is very helpful and a great companion for Twilight, nobody can be quite like Spike, who is always there for the main six throughout the series. This is something I have had trouble with personally. Similar to Pinkie Pie, when I see my friends acting suspiciously, it rubs me the wrong way, and I tend to jump to conclusions and have a lot of anxiety around the situation. However, it's eventually revealed that the main six are trying to return the favor to Pinkie Pie and throw her a birthday party, not abandon Gummy's party. Again, it's absolutely understandable why Pinkie felt the way she did. It did appear that her friends were blowing her off, which wouldn't have been cool. However, if your friends are real friends, it's likely that they aren't missing out for malicious reasons. It may even just be that they need a mental health break or have prior commitments. So, while if you feel suspicious about something, you can admit that to yourself and be honest about that, but never assume the worst from your friends, because if they're your real friends, they're not trying to spite you. Finally, we reached the awaited event of the season. The Grand Galloping Gala. Personally, I was with Spike 100% from the beginning. I do not like parties because I'm a naturally more reserved and cautious person and I enjoy laying low. However, when I do go out, I like to set boundaries. I'm going to enjoy myself as much as I can, and if that means just going out to dinner and then chatting with people while the rest of my friends go crazy, then that's fine with me. The main six learn that not everything is gonna go their way. While the night looks up in the beginning, Twilight cannot get the time with the princess that she wants. Applejack hardly makes any money for the farm, which is BS because that food looks amazing. I'd be eating all of that TBH. She can have all my money. Honestly, she can have all my money. I'll eat all of that. Fluttershy cannot bond with one creature. Pinkie Pie isn't able to fully express herself. And Rainbow Dash is unable to hang out with the Wonderbolts. And Rarity's crush ends up being a total. In the end, the night's a hot mess, and the girls regroup in the end and just hang out at a donut shop, which is honestly my kind of vibe. I would definitely be down for that. But most importantly, they end up making the most of a night that was starting to be a disaster and turning around what could have been a memory to burn. You can always turn things around because after all, life goes on. Don't let a few mishaps ruin everything. Overall, I had a lot of fun rewatching this season, and I'm looking forward to continuing. Yes, some of the episodes were a little cringy, and I'm obviously no longer the target audience for this show, but I'm realizing that I'm taking a lot more from the show than I did before, and there are elements of it that everyone can learn from, and that's part of the fun. I realized that I did not cover my exact opinion on every episode, and most notably, the songs. So if you want my opinion on that, I'd be happy to make a separate video or ranking videos of other things, because I do love making those as well. I'll be watching season 2 at some point and rewatching other shows from my childhood too. Some of my definite reviews that I have in mind are Lego Ninjago, Total Drama, Disney Pixar, Avatar: Last Airbender, and more. So please let me know what you're interested in seeing next. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and thanks for joining me on my nostalgia trip.